Welcome to the 11th session, where we are using ancient wisdom to meet the new global goal of education to create the basis of a well-being curriculum. The application of IKS'S ways of knowing PRATYAKSHA, ANUMANA, UPAMANA and SHABDA PRAMANA in education helps to create a twofold distinction which guides education. This twofold distinction is of awareness and a study of limits. First of all, searching and speaking the truth activates the voice of conscience. This leads to the second, that is, voluntary limits we place on ourselves that restrain actions within the boundaries of righteous conduct. The current knowledge system has the same curriculum methodology for all investigation. IKS recognizes that truth can be subtle and gross. Its UPAMANA and ANUMANA, its inference and comparison, investigate these truths from a different standpoint. It doesn't use the same methodology of investigation for everything as in the current system. The current system in the 19th century recognized the truth to primarily being gross. It may have used the gross methodology to explore the subtle truth. This reductionist dream failed and may have resulted in the idea of scientific materialism, which then guided academic framework of thought throughout the 19th century. Sense perception became a basis of using UPAMANA and ANUMANA, inference and comparison. The work of Maslow, Sarah Lazar of Harvard, Berkeley's The Greater Good Science Center, the Mind and Life Institute, Professor Sir Gary Cooper, etc. came much later. Still, education is not yet divided into a subtle and a gross academic framework that applies to work and living life simultaneously. IKS gives us this framework, which tells us that the first part of academics is to build awareness, and this awareness is a necessary condition. It builds ideas of ethics as a voluntary choice. This comes through practices, of which speaking the truth, silent sitting, etc., that are necessary conditions of this course are some of these practices. The sufficient condition is that all the theories, constructs and experiments, only if they are applied in society with the correct awareness, will they be able to protect society. The idea of teaching nuclear physics is meaningless in IKS if education has not trained the human mind not to lift the finger on the nuclear button. This can only come with awareness. That builds a study of limits. Human actions must be guided by a self-imposed study of limits. The 2008 and 2020 crises were because awareness did not guide a study of limits. Hence, no limits were placed on human behavior. What can restrain human behavior? Laws have not worked for thousands of years. We know that it is wrong to do some things. We know that we will not like the same thing being done to us. Despite knowing this, some keep on indulging in such behavior. This is not a new phenomenon. It has been going on for millennia. A knowledge system may not be able to eliminate it fully, but can some knowledge system restrain its occurrence? reduce its frequency and impact on society? Please write down a strategy for education that can restrain human behavior. Take 5 minutes off. We started this session seeing people getting robbed. Is this true human nature? Can evidence to the contrary suggest otherwise? Skeptics today would say that human nature is not what it was. Indian skeptics would say it's not Ram Rajya, the rule of Lord Rama. They will even give explanations using ideas of IKS. They may even quote its time cycles to state that this is Kali age. It is just not possible to live with self-restraint. Let this not discourage you to pursue the ideas of this course. Some will challenge you to produce evidence to the contrary, to convince you that you should only concentrate on securing good marks and not take this course content seriously. Remember, IKS is not about how well you answer those critics, but about how well you can transform yourself. Irrespective of how smart your answers are, remember they will always fall short of their questioning. Save your time and energy to concentrate on your thoughts, your words, and your deeds. But just for the record, I am sharing a link in the lecture notes. It is a BBC travel article written in 2016. Its excited headline states, and I quote, "The village with no locks or doors," unquote. This is not an invitation for you to keep your doors and windows open. It is only to show the awareness that you need to keep the windows of your mind open. The study of limits teaches us that self-protection is the first dharma. Do keep your doors firmly locked to prevent theft. Let's now see the BBC stories. Many of you have heard of it. Some have visited it, but few may recollect this example of IKS. Is no lock put on the doors in this village named Shingnapur in Maharashtra because all villagers know each other and no one from outside comes? The BBC article says that 40,000 visitors come every day. Yet, historically, the crime rate is very low despite the infinite opportunity. The villagers leave their money and jewelry unsecured, yet feel safe. The article gives a photo of India's first lockless bank working there. The police station there has not received a single complaint till date. This is possible, but all have to share the same awareness. Only education can impart such a common awareness to all in society. Till such awareness is attained, a study of limits must be used and doors locked by all. Thus, IKS's twofold approach is very practical. What is the idea that the course is sharing? That the doors of the mind should remain open, the door of the house should be kept shut. Because Gandhi said, "I don't want my house to be walled in on all sides and my windows to be stuffed. I want the culture of all lands to be blown about my house as freely as possible. But I refuse to be blown off my feet by any," unquote. What does this example demonstrate? It demonstrates IKS values. These values are enabled by a twofold classification of education. This education may not be formal education as we understand it today. It is education that has become part of a cultural tradition that is handed down over generations. The twofold classification begins by creating this twofold approach in this way. 1. An awareness of the truth. The truth may not always be deep and in the way the earlier 10 lectures have elaborated it. It may be in a way that is acceptable to current knowledge systems. It can start with a simple fear: God is watching what I do. If full confidence is there in such a truth, it is a sign of faith. Current knowledge system states that faith is a way of knowing. IKS would say that firm faith in oneself is the best way of knowing. But faith in God is the best way to start towards that. It leads to fear of sin, which is a good beginning. The awareness of truth is enough to lead the second, which is a study of limits. The video you saw at the beginning of the session showed that there is no limit to human conduct. Police has not been able to stop stealing despite laws. Awareness of truth that God is watching, and that too all the time, or a higher truth, naturally creates limits to human behavior. It leads to natural conduct emerging. It is with no effort, either by society, the laws, the government, but it emerges naturally within the human being. The uncertainty principle of the quantum world is accompanied by a certainty of the laws that are useful for daily life. Why this dichotomy in knowledge? Can a knowledge system give a holistic view of both realities? Just when we feel that we know everything about something, we discover we know nothing about it. This nothing will be in another dimension. Quantum physics may be telling us this. If we know everything about where a particle is located, that is, the uncertainty of position is small, we know nothing about its momentum. The uncertainty position is large, and vice versa. This sometimes we find may philosophically prove to be correct, especially when we make absolute statements and discover many years later that they are not true. Many discoveries in modern science too have met this fate. But when we are going to sit on a chair, we don't come across this phenomena. We are sure where it is and how we can sit on it. Hence, our daily actions are taken by us in the area of certainty about physical facts. Can we extend this to all phenomena in the universe with certainty? Or is it that we need a twofold approach when we seek an understanding of the universe for the purpose of educating ourselves? Education should give us a holistic vision of how to live life. Can only a twofold approach give it? IKS's scientific twofold approach is based on origin and expansion of the universe as basic ground rules. How did the origin of the universe unfold itself? As we are a part of the universe and its unfolding, what lessons can we draw from it? These larger questions were raised later. The first questions were about nature and its phenomena. The OECD seeks to transform attitudes through education. The attitude to learn is demonstrated by the Rig Veda. It is an attitude of humility while witnessing the phenomena of nature. Is such an attitude useful? If so, how? Their attitude of humility and questioning led to different results. They did not think splitting the atom was the peak of questioning. They took their search wider. They used the knowledge of its energy to comprehend larger truth, to transform energy present within oneself. This led to a discovery that in the process of creation, the elements got created first. Among them, some were gross and some subtle. These elements are present within us, the physical bodies, too. Hence, if some elements within us are subtle, they should be used subtly to create awareness. The gross elements must be used the way all nature works, within limits. What is the way nature unfolded after creation? What can we learn from it? how to use what we have learnt from nature. Can we apply it today? These questions were very important. They led to all the later conclusions. They led to the concept of nothingness, oneness, and infinity. There was one origin, there cannot be two origins. This led to the idea of one source. We can call it God or any name. One source has expanded nothingness or zero into all of creation. When we see creation and its expressions that are ever expanding, even as our knowledge advances, we get an idea of infinity. How did this one lead to infinity? Such was their investigation. They found this oneness expressed itself through 5 elements everywhere. Hence, they simplified multiplicity or infinity by comprehending that all of this is based on 5 elements only. It then became obvious that as humans are part of the same creation, they too should be composed of the same 5 elements. The study of 5 elements is the basis of IKS. Now, how should education guide human behavior? As the 5 elements humans have are the same as in nature, following the laws that the 5 elements express in the gross bodies and elements in the nature will be useful. All these laws work within limits. This guides us how to use our gross body. The important question remains, how to use the mind? The Vedas guided the subtle elements. There are 2 things that humans have, the body and the mind. How to use them? How do the Vedas meet OECD's new requirements from education? It is obvious, after simple investigation of nature, that there are 2 things that work within humans, the body and the mind. Their use in the last 150 years has disappointed all. The body is gross and the mind is subtle. This raised the question, how to use the gross body and the subtle mind? The OECD seeks that values should be imparted during education. The use of the subtle mind can do this, but how? This was clarified in the Eternal Ideas of Righteous Conduct text of Yajurveda. It uses fire sacrifice in the outside world. This signifies subtle sacrifice of desires through the fire of energy within us, which is used as work or karma in daily life too. Of course, there is another question of transformative competencies that the OECD now seeks from education. These will deal with the nature of being that humans are. How to comprehend the nature of being, the prana or the vital energy that makes them the 5 elements act. The Samaveda reveals the transformative music in nature and our inner nature. And we know that all music emerges from the sound Om. OECD seeks reflection before action through education. Atharva Veda imparts discrimination to the human mind, that is the end result of reflection before action. This is how the Vedas serve the new global goal of education. To understand creation, IKS studies the 5 elements that are its basis and the basis of humans. Some elements are gross. Ether is its subtlest element. IKS finds that all materialization in creation works within its limits or its dharma. For example, our body works best within limits of temperature, else fever spoils our work. Similarly for blood pressure. Each element, earth, water, fire, air and sky, that gives shape to matter has its unique nature. Some elements that are subtle like air and ether remain subtle within humans too. Air, IKS finds, gets identified with the mind and ether with consciousness. but consciousness can get attracted to the lower elements. However, with the use of the intellect, it has a capacity to raise itself above back to ether. We discuss fire later, but water is always formed by a combination of hydrogen and oxygen in a fixed proportion. It always follows its physical and chemical properties. Because humans are so very sure of this, they use water freely. Water is life sustaining for not only humans but for all of creation. The materialized physical world that sense perception sees is of chemicals. All solids, liquids and gases are chemicals. They are all a result of materialization that started from the vibration causing the Big Bang. All chemicals work within limits of their formula and physical and chemical properties. IKS thus concluded that study of creation's materialization is a study of limits of each and everything. Generally, things that are subtle are not chemical. Creation started with materialization as chemistry, and current knowledge systems concerns primarily with it. IKS is exploring questions that scientists are ignoring. All study in IKS uses scientific investigation. Its explorations will always start with the study of creation. All its gross elements and subjects work as a study of limits. The subtle subjects of creation create awareness of a raised level of consciousness. Current knowledge system uses current ideas of science that looks mainly at the materialization aspect. Does viewing creation through this lens restrict their vision? Do change in explanations show that they are unable to solve the mysteries of the universe and creation? IKS instead looks at everything from the perspective of energy, which is not a chemical. It studies creation, preservation and creative destruction. It looks more closely at non-chemicals like light, heat and sound. It studies not just their behavior, their properties or experiments with them. It explores the source and the nature of the five elements themselves. The three non-chemicals, light, heat and sound, can be created by fire. Hence we said that we will discuss fire separately. Fire is the dividing line between the gross and the subtle. What is above fire? The subtle world exists there. Subtle thoughts, dreams, IKS says, come from air. Then gravity or magnetism should be subsets of ether. Ether, probably. Can science deny that at the onset of creation a sound was created? IKS says the sound is Om. How can it raise consciousness? This is the kind of search IKS does. Fire is the dividing line between the elements and is thus a source of raising consciousness. Based on the revelations of the seers and the comprehension of this phenomena, living life and education was divided into two parts: an awareness and a study of limits. The symbol Om is a dividing line between awareness and the study of limits. Hence, Om is used in the beginning of the fire sacrifices done in the Vedic yajnas. How is it a dividing line? The voluntary acceptance of a study of limits leads to a righteous conduct in IKS. The use of the five sense organs should be a study of limits. Then humans are ready for awareness that Om signifies. After offering our bad qualities to the fire in an inner or outer yajna, can we be ready for the higher truth? IKS asks simple questions. Why do bad qualities arise? It says that the human mind fluctuates between emotions and is by nature not stable. It is compared to the moon, which waxes and wanes and changes every day. Thus, the moon symbolizes the human mind. IKS way of mind control starts with sense control. Hence, its study of limits is crucial. Only after sense control and mastery over the mind is awareness of the truth possible. How to attain it? We may consider all our activity is because of the fire principle within ourselves. We can sacrifice all bad thoughts to it. This prevents bad deeds. Then simple, regular recitation of Om is the path to raising consciousness using the resonance principle of modern science described in the last session. Can visualization of how elements work help an awareness and study of limits? We discuss 5 elements as the eternal or Vedic curriculum for human transformation. Each of these 5 elements is in the gross and subtle body. It is expressing itself in these 5 ways each. So, let us look at ether. Ether becomes the inner senses, which is the cognizer, the one who knows and comprehends the highest truth. It becomes the mind, the intellect, the ego and subconscious mind. So, it is Jnanata, Manasa, Buddhi, Ahamkara, Chitta. Air becomes 5 vital airs. Then it becomes the digestive air, the circulating air, the upward moving air, the life breath and the downward moving. Samana, Vyana, Udana, Prana, Apana. The fire principle gives the organs of knowledge, the sensory organs, the ear, the skin, the eye, the tongue and the nose. These draw a dividing line in human behavior towards the study of limits. Water becomes the subtle rudimentary elements like sound, touch, form, taste, smell. Earth gives the organs of action, that is the vocal organs, the hands, the legs, the genitals and the excretory organs. How to comprehend the body, the mind and consciousness? IKS states that humans have not one but 3 bodies, the gross body, the subtle body and the causal body. Some say we have 4, the supercausal body too. The gross body consists of the 25 elemental principles just described. Inside the gross body, the subtle body consists of the 5 organs of perception which come from ether, the 5 subtlenesses which come from water, the 5 airs, the mind and the intellect. These 17 categories combine to constitute the subtle body. The gross body relates to the wakefulness stage and the subtle body to the dream stage. The conscious inner self in the deep sleep state is the causal state, where the subconscious mind, the chitta, is in association with the knower, the knowing principle, that is the jnanata. The self, luminous cosmic intelligence, the hiranyagarbha, is the supercausal state beyond deep sleep, the turya. The gross body relates to earth, that is bone, skin, flesh, veins, hair. The water relates to blood, urine, saliva, phlegm and brain. Fire relates to hunger, thirst, sleep, steadiness, mating. Air relates to activity, movement, speed, shame, fear. And ether relates to lust, greed, anger, pride, envy and envy. That is how these are comprehended. So, awareness in IKS of the human body naturally leads to a study of limits. Society recognizes a study of limits of human behavior is needed. That's why laws are made. Every nation has a constitution. Should this not be part of education? Laws are designed to ensure that such limits are maintained. IKS, to make the implementation of laws easy, makes a study of limits voluntary. Its awareness seeks to awaken the conscience so that all follow righteous conduct. This happens by transforming the heart, making the intellect use discrimination. Then the academic tools learnt during education are used like a surgeon uses a knife with the intention of curing. Else the misuse of tools were like a knife that causes murder. The misuse of academic tools. Some would say that 2008 is an example of their misuse. Dividing the body into gross, subtle and causal makes it clear that there is a distinction between awareness and study of limits. The awareness to help and limits guide a surgeon. The awareness comes from the subtle and causal principles, and the study of limits relates to the gross body. The awareness that education should generate should lead naturally to a study of limits when using the gross body. This distinction may not always be there in the current knowledge system, creating repeated crises. This distinction is not a matter of theory, but again a matter of practice to make things clear. If practice has made the distinction firmly clear, will that too be a challenge? Once distinction between the gross and subtle is firm, how to integrate it back? What practice that is the practice that will do it? After making a distinction between the gross and the subtle, the question is on integrating it back, and the unity of thought, word and deed is a transformative practice for that. Because the human has three outputs: thought, word and deed. Thought is related to the subtle body. Deeds are done by the gross body. Word is in the middle, like the bridge. Religions say that materialization in creation after the Big Bang started with the word. Hence, the power of the word has been recognized since time immemorial. It is the bridge between the subtle state and the gross state. We know for safety a bridge must be strong. Speaking the truth is a transformative practice if this truth is spoken gently, sweetly, without hurting. It is better to keep silent otherwise. In the previous session, we had seen the impact of the resonance principle of the word Om and ether. It has a transformative effect. Unity of thought, word and deed creates a similar resonance within the individual. When the inner resonance and resonance of the word are created together, the resonance is more impactful and more meaningful. IKS used unity of thought, word and deed by all to transform society. When an individual exhibits unity of thought, word and deed, he or she is trusted by all. Trust is the basis of society. If you are not sure whether the person standing next to you is telling the truth or means what he says, will you trust him or her? The answer is obvious. Can society work without mutual trust? Individuals and institutions all need to be truthful. 2008's recession occurred because the truth of the derivatives was not revealed to innocent investors. The 2020 crisis occurred because the deadly dangers of the virus were not revealed in the very first instance in 2019. Lack of truth proves very costly for society. Some people like Mahatma Gandhi have experienced individual transformation and the inner peace and well-being that speaking the truth imparted. His autobiography is titled "The Story of My Experiments with Truth." Can we imagine the resonance if all in society start using truth and unity of thought, word and deed? The purpose of education in IKS is to create this resonance of well-being using these practices not only within individuals but collectively in society. We can imagine 1,000,000 tuning forks creating resonance. If the volume of sound produced is a sign of well-being, we can only imagine how OECD's goal of education will be fulfilled by IKS. After making a distinction between the gross and the subtle, how to integrate it back? Let's share some techniques. We have seen the importance of creating a distinction of the gross, subtle and causal body to create a twofold distinction between awareness and a study of limits. While the awareness of one humanity is essential, it does not imply that others, all that they own is you own it too. Hence, after creating a distinction, an awareness of one's potential is integrated using cosmic sound Om, unity of thought, word and deed, as well as speaking the truth and following righteous conduct. How does this potential create an awareness of unity with others, nature, etc.? Many Vedic mantras are used to create it. The Purusha Suktam, for example, states very simply that humans are a limb of society and society is a limb of nature. Through such visualizations, the firm linkages between the individuals, society and nature were created during the education years itself, the impressionable years. To follow the spirit of IKS, the idea of mantra, yantra and tantra cannot be imposed. Its concept will have to be explained in a way that captures the spirit in some manner. Agnostics, non-believers or believers from another religion may be open to hear its idea but not follow it. A typical question will be, can you tell us what to think, not do? You cannot guide us, our action, but yes, we are open to the thought that you have something to contribute. They can then judge the thought on its merit to see its appeal. It is not necessary for them to agree. All the three, mantra, yantra and tantra, have tra in common. Mantras are called by some as tools of thought. They are not tools for transforming others' thought, but they are tools for transforming one's own thought. The first word ma means manan or reflection upon it for understanding. We need to understand this message, comprehend it and absorb it. That is important. We have summarized the meaning of all the mantras of Purusha Suktam earlier only to show that these are person sensitive, religion neutral. They are sensitive to the forces of creation, the things in creation and in society. They are not promoting any one religion. They are accepted as eternal laws of righteous conduct. The same ideas of these mantras are expressed in religious texts of all other religions but in a different way. In fact, the Vedas claim that truth is one, but the wise express it in many ways. Ekam sat vipra bahuda vadanti. In this manner, the same truth in religious texts of all traditions or even ideas expressed by non-believers and agnostics are fully accepted in IKS, so long as they are within the idea of righteous conduct. The integration of differences in approach, the integration of the distinction of the three types of bodies humans have, the integration of the universal ideas that lead to well-being and fulfill the new global goal of education are done also through the concept of mantra, yantra and tantra. So, we said that mantra, yantra, tantra have tra in common. Tra liberates us from bondage of illusion of the gross world which is depriving us of well-being. Now, seeking forgiveness from the wise, I am sharing this. Tra works on the mind, the body and the heart. How to comprehend the unity of the three? Think of Tra as a way of liberation. Liberation from bondage of a narrow view to harm others. Perception of such a powerful truth hidden in the mantras trains the mind to visualize excellence and goodness. Recited with Om increases its resonance power of transformation of the individual. A yantra implies a machine. The body is the yantra to implement excellence through actions. The heart, filled with love and compassion, is the tantra. Thus, the body, heart, and mind are trained through education in IKS. The two dots may be visualized as representing living in duality, which requires using purusharthas, with mantra, tantra, yantra liberating humans from bondage of duality. Now, this may not be scholarly, but if it helps remember the message, use it till you meet a wise person. Can a simple way of or inner significance of mantra, tantra, yantra be given? Well, natural balance results from equidistance when centered persons follow the middle way. Tra is the common letter in all three. If we understand what binds them together into a holistic model, it may be easier. Tra expands, protects, liberates. So, what needs to be expanded? Adding it to the mind and heart creates a vehicle for expanding them. They are expanded to feel the pain of others as one's own pain. This transforms attitudes, creates values and well-being in society, fulfilling OECD needs. The Sanskrit letter Tra in mantra, yantra, tantra may be turned a little. This will make it look like a fulcrum, a pivot which lifts heavy loads with little effort. Similarly, these three, mantra, tantra, yantra, uplift human thought, word and deed by creating excellence easily. The fulcrum of truth is also a symbol of Boolean algebra, which deals with truth values. But some may ask, there is no top line of Tra shown here. How can I interpret it to understand IKS and its management of life and the business of living life? Again, seeking forgiveness from all, a view for agnostics and non-believers is being created. A meaning for the line above Tra may be something like this. The line may show a capacity to go till infinity in both directions. What directions? Sideways is awareness, and it leads to the infinite, and it shows that the study of IKS is in two parts: awareness and study of limits. The awareness IKS created is to impart ever-expanding ideas of serving society with selfless love. A line puts limits to human actions to do the right thing. A right angle, if drawn on the side of the constraining line, gives the right view of helping all, the right angle to view things with, that is of never harming others. That's the right angle. While one side of Tra is constrained by putting a line on top, the other side, the symbol of Boolean algebra, remains unconstrained in an infinite awareness of creation's unity shown by atoms. You may like to use it to remember that human actions are constrained by limits or purusharthas. The dharma of family, firm, society, nation, etc. imposes duties. These are a natural study of limits for all humans. They create balance only if they are practiced daily by the individual. This course lays a deep emphasis on practice. Every attempt is made to make all the lectures very short. A 5-minute slot at the end of this lecture is being given for silent sitting. This is to enable the participant to mull over what is said. Whatever has been heard should be repeated in the mind so that it gets absorbed. Just as sugar is stirred in a cup of tea or coffee with a spoon, use the spoon of silence to stir the sugar of Indian knowledge systems in your mind. It takes some time for the tea or coffee to become sweet. Patience is very important. The perspectives shared in the course will seem meaningful only if such silent sitting is done to mull over what has been said. Else, the half an hour spent in delivering the lectures will be a waste of time. We welcome you to undertake an inner journey during these 5 minutes. Only then will knowledge that is outside you will become wisdom inside you. The time allocated for this is actually 20 minutes, not 5 minutes. The time should be increased gradually. This is also a time for the mind to take rest. In case it cannot do that, mull over whether the voice of the conscience has guided you at any time in life till now. We accept challenges for the physical body in games. In a gym, we can have a 20 minutes plank challenge. We may exchange challenges on the quantity of food we can eat. Can we go beyond such challenges to the second step of the Indian knowledge systems? Can we see if the mind itself can take rest and maybe stop working? Can we explore what will happen if it becomes zero? Remember, it is not good to challenge the mind. It rebels and makes you do the opposite of what you want it to do. It is far simpler to observe the mind. For doing this, first the physical body should move as little as possible. Observe the mind as it tells the body to move. You are not telling the body to move, the mind is telling the body to move. Observe the mind. Move away from the mind and see what it is forcing the body to do. Watch the mind as if you are sitting on a fan at a distance. When you are at home, Shavasana in yoga is a good posture for this practice. Try to first silence the body, then the mind. For those who have mastered this, they can try the next method. When you think of nothing, can you experience love without giving it a shape of a thing like your favorite food or a thing that you want to own or the physical form of a person? Can it just be love without an emotion to a person or a thing? Can it be love for the sake of love? How do you experience loving yourself? The purpose of this course is to help you discover yourself, that loving being beyond the body and the mind.